Welcome to Coffee and Cameras, where I pick a topic around photo, video, or gear and try to wrap up my thoughts before I finish my coffee. Today's topic is Adobe Premiere Pro. Spent some time this week trying out Premiere Pro, and I'll cover some of the benefits and cons that I ran into while using this program. Now, I'm a Final Cut Pro editor for the most part. I have a year or so under my belt with Final Cut Pro, and I use it to edit all these videos on this YouTube channel. And one of the main reasons I was looking at Premiere Pro was for the new text-based editing feature where it highlights your pauses as little ellipses inside of square brackets. Shows you how long you paused and allows you to delete them and kind of edit your timeline in a Word document style. So you can cut and paste different lines. It highlights in the timeline where the sections of text are. So I thought that was pretty cool, and I thought to myself, well, hey, that might save me some time because I typically record for maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes. There's definitely a lot of dead space in there. I don't think I have a video much longer than 10 minutes. Typically, they're a lot shorter than that. So I was hopeful that I'd be able to pull up this document and highlight all of the ellipses and delete them all at once. As it turns out, with the current, stable non-beta version at the time of making this video, it doesn't work like that. Maybe that feature's coming in the future. I don't know. So that's a little bit disappointing. Cutting the video that way was still slow, and maybe even a hair slower than my normal chopping process in Final Cut Pro with keyboard shortcuts. Next, I'll move on to color and LUTs. I actually really like the way that Premiere has this set up. It makes a lot of sense, right? If you've used Lightroom or Photoshop or really any photo editor and you've played around with sliders for exposure, contrast, highlights, that's effectively what it looks like inside of the program. I thought the breakdown or separation between, a basic Lumetri panel where you would put a conversion LUT to get your footage to Rec 709, that broken up from the creative side of things where you put a look LUT makes a lot of sense, and it's automatically structured the right way for you, right? Where you do your basic adjustments, you get your exposure, your contrast, your levels where you want them, convert the footage, then put your look on top of it. Final Cut kind of does the same thing. It gets a little confusing though when you start adding custom LUTs in Final Cut. If you don't add the color wheels first, it actually puts them in the wrong spot. So that's a tip from Dylan, the Final Cut bro, that I've picked up. Thanks for that. You got to have the color wheels at the top, then your conversion LUT. Then if you want to have a look LUT, you can have that there. So I'll give some points to Premiere for that one. Now, the elephant in the room is obviously DaVinci is still the industry standard here. Out of the box, despite nodes not making any sense to me. They still don't make any sense. I haven't really put enough effort into them to truly learn them though. But DaVinci suffers with some of the same user interface complexity problems that I found in Premiere Pro, right? Everything's just a little bit too difficult, or maybe it just seems too difficult to me coming from Final Cut Pro. And with that, I'll get to the timeline, and specifically the magnetic timeline. It's one of those things you hear Apple people say alongside the word ecosystem that can make them insufferable to talk to. And I guess I'm one of them, right? I'm an Apple person. But they aren't overselling it here. Manually deleting a file from the timeline and then deleting the blank space that it left to get your footage to snap back just seems archaic. Now, I know there's a keyboard shortcut for ripple delete and that feature exists, but I actually couldn't get the ripple delete keyboard shortcut to work, so that was frustrating. And because of how the timeline works, the cutting process took me about twice as long in Premiere Pro. So then, moving on to titles and animations. Adobe After Effects is a really powerful tool, and the Adobe suite has everything you need to make motion graphics or overlays, whatever you want to do. I tried to download some simple packs off of Artlist to do lower thirds and some title animations. And I feel like I was doing something wrong here. You guys can tell me in the comments if I was or not, but these things opened up as another project, and then you have to scrub through the list, titles, 1 through 20 or whatever. Brings up a timeline of that title, and you have to scrub through it to see what the animation looks like. And then you can go in and edit the text and edit the color and speed and whatever. It's like 5 steps, and you have an extra project open before you're able to dump your titles in. I don't know. That can't be how it actually works, right? For contrast, I use Motion VFX for the most part. When I'm in Final Cut Pro, I have a number of the different packs installed, and they're effectively drag and drop your animation in, your animation out. If it animates throughout, you have checkboxes for those things. You can set scale, you can drag and drop. It's a really simple user interface to use within Final Cut Pro. And a lot of those you can export to Apple Motion if you have that installed. If you're using something over and over and over again, and you want to have your own text in there, your own picture in there, for like a lower thirds overlay maybe, you can export that to Apple Motion and save that as its own preset, which is really cool. All right, multicam editing. So I don't do this very often, but I have maybe 3 or 4 times in Final Cut where I've used a multicam workflow. And it's relatively straightforward. You have your camera set up. If you have multiple audio sources, you can set different audio sources, different camera sources. You can set it to switch between, when you switch to camera 2, it goes to audio source 2, etc. But it's a really easy interface to use. I don't even want to talk about how long it took me to get the single right audio track to show up in Premiere Pro. I was using a 2-camera system. I had mics on both of them just so I had clean audio that I could sync up in post. Way too much time. Way too much time. Now, I'll move on to performance. Performance was fine. Performance was fine. I won't crap on Adobe for performance. I did have one crash. It was right when I installed the program. I had loaded in some test footage and was screwing around with LUTs and color, and I had one crash. I did have some stutter in the timeline. The multicam editing workflow was not smooth, was not seamless, and even text-based editing, there was some lag there. When you delete an ellipse, you could tell that the program was churning before it made the cut and deleted the blank space. I didn't play around with audio at all, but most of the time you're hearing audio straight out of the camera anyways. In Final Cut, I'll occasionally do the loudness box, which kind of helps equalize things, bring everything up to a similar level. And for this room specifically, I have a preset for the DJI mics that I use sometimes. Helps them sound a little bit less like a lav mic and a little bit better, in my opinion. So you can definitely do both of those things in Adobe. I didn't get that far in my workflow. I honestly gave up on this project. I was super frustrated the whole time using it, not really knowing. Definitely didn't give myself enough time to really learn the program before I just dove in and said, let's edit a video in Premiere, which is, how I would learn anyways. So I just did it. I was like, let's just edit a video in Premiere. And lastly, price. This bundle that I bought and have now returned was $70 a month. So if you're not making money on this, if you're running a YouTube channel or whatever, if this isn't your profession and you don't need Adobe Premiere Pro to make a living, boy, that's a hefty price tag to justify for anyone. Now the other half of this is I have the Lightroom 1 terabyte plan. I have about 200 gigabytes of stuff in the Adobe Cloud system, and you can't bundle the 1 terabyte with the entire suite of Creative Cloud apps. So the price you see on the website, $55 or whatever it is, wherever you live, and that base package for all of their apps comes with 100 gigabytes. So for me, I had to upgrade to a 2 terabyte plan, which is just, absurd. Of course, there's nothing that would stop them from tying that 1 terabyte of storage to those, the new package. So hefty price tag. That's all I can say. Hefty price tag. And that was one of the main things that I knew immediately. After using it for 4 or 5 or 6 hours, I knew immediately, man, this isn't for me. $70 a month, I'm not making money on this. Can't afford that. I mean, I could afford it, but it just doesn't make any financial sense. For perspective, I started this video and had it in a position in Premiere where I was about ready to start adding text overlays and B-roll on top of it. And I pretty much gave up on Premiere and redid this in Final Cut. And to get to that point, and actually a little bit further, was about half the time. It took me maybe an hour, hour and a half to get my first 2 cuts done, have most of my titles and overlays on, and had B-roll in on top of it, which is wild. I mean, I know some of that is inefficiency. Most of that is inefficiency, let's say. But I guess the lesson here is don't change for the sake of change. If something's working well for you, keep on with it. And my sentiment with Premiere is still overall that things take about 1 or 2 steps too many compared to Final Cut. And like I said, I know Premiere is an industry standard, so if you're in the profession, you're using this, and that's probably just how it is. But if you were a beginner filmmaker or YouTuber, or you want to just make home movies, and you came to me and said, Bill, which video editor should I use? I'm definitely not recommending Premiere Pro. And I'm probably not recommending Final Cut either, based on the $300 price tag is a lot for a normal person. I started on iMovie, which is great for editing home movies. It works fine. It has some transitions. You can make some basic edits. You can make things look pretty good in iMovie. If you needed more power than that, I would definitely recommend DaVinci Resolve, the free version, if you were seriously looking at learning a video editor like this. And I know there's other options out there. A lot of people use CapCut, VN, LumaFusion. There's other options. I don't have hands-on experience with those, which is why I don't talk about them. So, how did we do? Not bad. 15 minutes recording. I'm about halfway done with my coffee. I think we'll consider that one a success. Thanks for tuning in to the first episode of Cameras and Coffee. And we'll catch you next time. Later.